Let's do it.
Welcome to another episode of the Holistic Sister Circle. Today we have Elissa here with us, and she is a late diagnosed autistic and ADHD speech language pathologist and autism clinical specialist. She founded SpeechWorks by Elissa to help parents of non-speaking and speech delayed children teach their kids to talk and thrive. Elissa is an expert cast member on the upcoming TV series Legacy Makers. Elissa, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome.
I am excited to be here. Thank you for that warm welcome.
Oh my gosh, you are very welcome. One of the things that I had was just so excited to talk to you about in general was obviously we have so many children right now who are battling autism and ADHD. Many of them have both. Some of them don't even know they may have ADHD, but they're on the spectrum. So I'm so excited to talk about this with you and just learn a little bit more about what exactly is autism and what should parents even be aware of as they're going through this? I'm going to share a couple of stories with you too, as we're going through this as well. But just start us off with how did you even get into this work? Like, how did you, yeah, let's start there.
Well, interesting enough, I was born. um, no, I was born without a diagnosis. I grew up through childhood and adulthood. I was diagnosed at 28, and we can get into that story a little bit later if you want. And I just did not know what was wrong my entire life. And I've always faced challenges, and I've always been able to use my gut instinct to get help or accommodations that I needed without even knowing there was something wrong. So I do tell parents that the diagnosis isn't as important as the treatment. I'm proof of it. I was undiagnosed, but I got myself the support I needed without that diagnosis. Of course, it's good to have a diagnosis because that diagnosis can get you services that you need, can get you funding for services. It's so expensive yearly for a parent to give their child, what they need to thrive and progress. So for me, I always had a passion to work with special needs children. I also loved sign language. My verbal strengths are not strong, those are my weaknesses. Although I'm talking to you, I can talk if I know the vocabulary and if it's a special interest of mine, which is related to music, autism, or marketing. Anything else, if we were to talk about the weather, I would stumble on my words. I couldn't find my words, and I would just probably go selectively mute on you. But after I got my third master's degree in speech language pathology, that's when I really dove deep and started to search out the most progressive techniques in the world. Up until I got through three master's degrees without knowing how to read or write. Um, when I did finally get a diagnosis at the third master's degree um, location, which is Gallaudet University, it's an all deaf college, and the undergraduate program, you needed to be deaf to attend. For the master's program, if you wanted to specialize in working with the deaf, you were accepted. Um, I'm so grateful that I was accepted. It was a top 10 school. I had been rejected from 18 schools on the East Coast. So to finally get into like a number three college back then was just incredible. And if I had not gone to that university, I probably wouldn't be diagnosed by now, or it would be really late. There are so many people like myself that are just getting diagnosed in their 50s. And because they were so in tune to special needs with working with the deaf, they knew exactly what to look for, how to test, and diagnose me. So this was the mid 90s. So it's unheard of to get a diagnosis that early for somebody my age. I'm in my 50s. So, yeah, I started to dive in and search out the most progressive techniques for myself and then also for my clients. And I basically, over the last 30 years, have combined every treatment approach into my approach called Speech Works by Elissa. And I'm just, I don't know, I get up every day and my reward is to see progress. Like the parents I work with have access to me 24/7 a day. So I get videos and feedback, and I just love hearing the progress on a daily basis. And most of the parents that come to me, their child, they've been to like millions of professionals that said their child's never going to talk, they're never going to thrive, they're never going to live independently, which is scary for a parent. And then they come to me and I evaluate, and I'm like, prognosis is excellent for speech. And it's, if they weren't referred by somebody else that had been through my programs, they wouldn't believe my prognosis. But they they are so excited to be able to see me and get the progress, and they know that it's been a long wait to get to see me, and so they follow through on all my recommendations, and the amount of progress is just really unbelievable. It really is.
This is so amazing. And one, I just want to just thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I don't think that, especially in the times that we're in, most people would have really made a decision to say, okay, I want to learn this, or I need to know more about it. And for you to not only have gone through it yourself, but having to really fight and claw for even the life that you want because not you just didn't know. I just think it's remarkable. Like how could you still have three master degrees and not even know how to read or write? Like that's incredible, and just the mind frame that you had to be in. I mean, I tell the girls all the time, we're literally giving them sixth, seventh, and eighth grade work right now from a homeschooling perspective, and they get frustrated on like problem two. And just knowing, all of the things that mentally you're battling or had to battle and still push forward, still had that grit and that tenacity, like that is incredible.
Yeah, I just am fortunate. I sometimes feel like I'm Forrest Gump, where I accidentally fall into things and do amazing things and wasn't even planning to do it. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity. I've been searching for a way for years because I can only see a handful of families in my private practice. And I'm grateful to be able to get this approach out to families all across the world. I, in the last year, have just released online coaching program so that I can at least give families the information that I have to share with their teams or help them find teams in their location, help them teach them how to advocate. I am really just another, everybody asks if I have kids, and I don't have any of my own, but I feel like a part of every family that I touch. And some of those families are with me for years and years and years. Even after I discharged, my first client, I want to say he's 31 years old and he's graduated college. He's working as a case manager at the university. I didn't have the tools. He was one of my very first. I did not have the tools I do now that were progressive. So I wasn't able to get like perfect, intelligible speech like typical peers, but he can communicate and most people can understand him. I wasn't able to teach reading and writing at that time. Now I do and have progressive techniques. So his reading and writing is limited, but with the skills that I did teach him, he was able to thrive and be successful. He follows me on social media platforms, so we keep in touch, and it's just really, really amazing.
This is so incredible. So Oh my gosh, I have so many questions that are going through my head right now. But the first one that I do believe that everyone is also thinking as well is when you really think about autism and you think about the type of lifestyle that even a parent needs to truly be better for their child in this circumstance, can you just share with us what does that look like, or what have you seen from a parental perspective? Because one of the things that, and I'll just give you some background on this too. One of the things that I noticed is that either parents are saying, okay, my child has autism, but they're not really doing anything to progress, like, and when I say progress them, I mean tenaciously progress them forward.
Mhm.
It's almost as if they're just like, this is normal. So I know they're going through the things. Here are some of the resources, but I'm not actively in pursuit of making sure that these things happen for my kid.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's is that normal to say that that happens in families, or if that is the case, what are some things that parents can actually do to just understand that this is actually something that can someone can help, or you can get the help that you need if you are in the pursuit of progressing toward that goal.
That's a great question. So, for a lot of families, especially if it's their first child, they don't have the tools, they don't have the resources, they usually don't have professionals or doctors that are going to identify things early. We are able to diagnose earlier and earlier, but there are waiting lists all over the world. It's just unbelievable. So, I hate to compare it to a death, but you have a new mom who's pregnant, taking care of that baby for 9 months, has decorated the room, gotten ready and prepared, can like foresee a future for their child. They believe their child is developing normal because they have nothing else to compare it to, and they visit the pediatrician once or twice a year, and don't know what speech and motor milestones to look for. So they I almost compare it to grieving when there's a death in the family. You have to grieve that thought once you get a diagnosis, and you're lucky to get that diagnosis before the age of 5 at, at this point with all the waiting lists. I hope things change in the future, but the language learning years are between 1 and 7 years old. I'm not saying that a child cannot learn after 7. That's like saying you are not able to learn Russian. You can learn anything, it's just harder. If you learned Russian at 7, it would be much easier. For parents that either don't get a diagnosis or are later diagnosed, they miss out on so many opportunities. And not only do they get a late diagnosis, but once they get the diagnosis, they have to go through the grieving process. They're in shock. They don't know where to go. And for some parents, it could take another 5 years to figure out the system, to figure out where the funding is, how the health insurance works, what's the best programs out there for their child, and who's the best professionals. So I know most of the parents that come to me have been through multiple speech therapists with no progress before they come to see me. So there's an entire process for the parents' mindset. And then once they're well educated, then it's like a lifestyle. They become acclimated, and they're excited just like me to get progress and see me retraining the brain every day.
No, this is really, really helpful. And I want to go back for a second when you said that the learning starts within the from 1 to 7 years old. What should parents actually be looking for during that time frame, just to make, obviously if they don't have necessarily have a diagnosis yet, but just to make sure that their child is just even on the right track?
Well, it's hard. Every child is different. There's a spectrum of symptoms. Females are harder to get diagnosed because we tend to mask our symptoms, whereas boys are just doing their thing. So it's more difficult for females to get a diagnosis. What was your question again?
What should parents look for within that 1 to 7 year time frame when they may not necessarily are looking for a diagnosis or not, but they just want to make sure that their kid is
Mhm.
just on the right track?
So there's a whole bunch of speech milestones and there's a whole bunch of motor milestones. But a lot of the parents, and this is over 30 years, a lot of the parents that come to me have reported that milestones were moving appropriately and on par until they received a vaccine. I I don't know, well, I do know what the connection is. I think we're going to get to that later. But it's hard because every child is different. Every child has a different history, birth history. So, and they're still searching on what the cause of autism is. Um, I do have a free download. It's a milestones checklist, and it covers all from birth to 7 years old, and it covers all milestones for speech, all for motor, for play, for social skills, and parents can check it off and make sure their child's on par. And if they didn't check it off and it's late to come, then I list tips that can help them or recommendations. This is when you have to go to the pediatrician and show them this form. And it's very, very helpful for a lot of parents because then they know exactly what to look for. I'm a big proponent of early intervention and preventative care. So I like to nip things in the butt before anything's a problem.
Absolutely. No, this is very helpful, and thank you. Please share that with us too. I'll put it in the description notes of the episode as well for those who would like that list. Now, one of the biggest things that you hit on was the vaccine, right? What have you noticed with the vaccine that has really been the testament to maybe some of the now diagnosis that some of children are having at this time?
Well, what I know is that I'm extremely progressive in everything that I do. I know that I've always been ahead of the times. So I don't just specialize in autism, I specialize in a lot of other things: auditory processing, working with the hearing impaired and deaf. I mean, the list goes on: cerebral palsy, Down syndrome. So there's a wide plethora of diagnoses that I work with. For kids on the spectrum, like I said, I would say 99% of parents say that their developmental milestones were either lost or stopped when or shortly after they got a vaccine. And when I did my first internship with a renowned speech language pathologist in New Jersey, actually, her name is Sherry Moreno um, Haken, and she is just absolutely fantastic. She runs the autism think tank in New Jersey, and it's a facility where they recruit. It's very interesting, not to go off track, but they recruit the most renowned specialists in the world. They do an intake with a family, find out what the problems are, and then create a team of specialists to review the case and give the parent recommendations. And they follow up, and it's just fantastic. She's very progressive as well. But what she told me when I did my internship in 1997, that she was going back and forth to England to do research studies on vaccines. She wasn't doing it personally, she was just involved. I don't remember if it was like pre and post testing or what it was. But I know she specifically told me that there's not a direct correlation to the vaccine. And this was in 98. And she came to Las Vegas to visit a year ago, and I confirmed this is what you told me in 98, right? And she said, yes. So she had said that typically with children on the spectrum, they have a low immune system. And so when they get the vaccine, their brain swells. And for kids that don't have a low immune system, they can overcompensate for that swelling and go back to normal. Whereas kids on the spectrum, their immune system can't fight it. We actually saw that with COVID vaccines, with immune deficient elderly people that didn't respond well to COVID vaccines. So why is it okay that an immune deficiency for the COVID vaccine causes difficulty, but not with the autism vaccine? What she had recommended at that time for me to tell parents is that they should split up their vaccines, not get them one at a time, not all together. Make a special request with the doctors and persist on it. She said that you can ask the doctor ahead of time for the batch number and research the incidence of certain diagnoses. And if you don't like that batch, ask for another one. She also, recommended, building a child's immune system as well. So that is what I've known for 30 years. Still to this day, there are things that I know, like back in the early 90s, I thought that both ADHD and autism were on a large spectrum, and everybody said, no way, you're crazy. There were a couple of different topics where I've predicted what's going to happen 20 years from now. So I'm really, really hoping, I know there's a lot of controversy, I'm not into politics, but I'm really, really hoping that this administration really, really dives deep and finds out some answers to make parents' life easier for parents. I know there's a big controversy on finding a cure. RFK really didn't use the right terminology when he was speaking. He's not an autism expert. He's not a parent of an autistic child. He is just a politician. So he did use incorrect wording, and so there was a lot of controversy. But I think his heart is in the right place. I personally know that a lot of well-known, renowned people in the field were called to the White House to give their information. So from behind the scenes, I know they're asking the right people the right questions to get information. There's just a lot of controversy over what he said in his speech. But I will say this is the first Autism Awareness Month this past April where the entire world talked about autism during that month. Usually it's just another month with another diagnosis or another problem. But really it got a lot of attention.
No, this is so great, and thank you so much for sharing that too. I think obviously it gives just parents a sense of just ease, just knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
From one perspective. And then I think the other perspective is for those who have already had the diagnoses, they know that their kid has autism or they're autistic at this point. They're past, maybe they're past the 5, 6-year-old mark at this moment. What would be some advice that you even just give to them just as they go through this journey?
You said at age 6, a
Yes.
parent with a child with age 6. If they're first getting a diagnosis, I would find out what state programs are available for them. I would make sure their diagnosis came from a neuropsychologist. For a lot of reasons, you need that diagnosis from a specialist. In some states, the school district will diagnose, but that's not a medical diagnosis. That's more of an educational diagnosis. You also want to make sure that you have all the legal paperwork at the school complete, an IEP with accommodations, and I highly recommend, especially in certain states, to hire an advocate. It's the best money that a parent could ever spend because it takes years to learn how to advocate. And as an expert witness with my experience with that, you really need to be on top of things. And it's so much better for the parent to just take the back seat and let a professional come in who knows the laws, knows their rights, and won't get taken advantage of, and will, in one meeting, get everything that they possibly need for their child's education. So that's really important at the age of 6. I would say make sure one common speech diagnosis within, well, there's two common speech diagnoses with children on the spectrum. One is motor planning disorder, often diagnosed as apraxia, where they can't manipulate their muscles to speak. Most kids learn how to speak through auditory feedback. They hear their mom say ball, they say ball. Based on what they heard, those muscles move. For kids on the spectrum, they have different learning styles, so they need more visual prompts, tactile prompts, kinesthetic prompts. I also specialize in auditory processing. The child can hear, their brain's just not processing what the signal is giving them. So basically, that affects so much. It affects the child's ability to follow directions, it affects the child's reading, it affects memory, it affects higher thinking skills like problem solving, decision making. So it's really, really important for a parent to find a therapist that specializes in those areas, both apraxia and auditory processing, to get the best results.
No, this is super helpful. And then for those, my last question on this particular topic is for those who, say at this point they're past the 6-year-old, they're past 6, do you believe that food has any correlation with what it is that they're doing? So, for example, I know we talked about like the different types of resources that they can get and just making sure that they're looking at like their state funding and things like that. But in the home, is there anything they can do that could help just from a nutritional standpoint and that's food related?
That's a loaded question. Do you have an hour? Um, to make it short and sweet, I don't think it's just food. I think it's nutrition overall and supplements and vitamins. I was fortunate enough, as I seek out the most progressive techniques for myself and my clients, I was fortunate enough to find a really amazing naturopathic doctor. This was 20 years ago. Um, and he was just absolutely incredible. They look at the root cause of problems. So they don't look at autism, they don't look at your medical diagnosis, they look at your symptoms, what's going on, and how can we fix that symptom. And so for me, I was a mess 20 years ago. For me, he looks at my stomach first. The stomach, which I've been saying for 25 years, and everybody's like, what? You don't know what you're talking about. The stomach is a second brain. So that was the most important part of the body to look at. He did some testing, some stool testing on me, and then he gave me some supplements um, to help with my stomach. And so it decreased stomach aches, it increased focus. It was probiotics and a couple of other things. I still maintain the probiotics plan. Then, and I reduced sugar and no gluten. I did not even realize that gluten and milk was causing so many problems for me. Then after that, when a couple of symptoms dissipated, then he looked at my neurotransmitters. There are actually tests, saliva tests, where the kids or myself spit in a bottle and they can evaluate what your hormones look like. And they found that I have a severe dopamine deficiency. That was back then. And so he recommended a whole bunch of things to increase my dopamine levels. And dopamine is a dopamine deficiency is very, very common with children um, that are on the spectrum. What else did he do? The gut, the head. He went all over the body. Um, at one point, he said, "Let's check your lead and mercury." It sounds like, as we layered and peeled back some of the symptoms, he's like, now it looks like it could be, metal toxicity. And I'm like, where would I get that? Who's trying to poison me? And sure enough, my test came back off the charts, lead and mercury poisoning. And so he said he's not sure exactly. I'm from New York, originally Long Island, so that population there tends to have a high off the chart. I also lived in a lead painted house for a good long time. So I'm not quite sure what caused it. Not sure. Back then, there was lead and mercury in the vaccines too when I was born. Since I'm 18, I haven't had a vaccine. I refuse. So yeah, after I did chelation to get the metals out of my body, I'm still not. It's hard to do chelation. I'm still not at normal levels, but the clarity and the focus has improved so much since then. And there are so many other things that he's done for me. Any symptom I have, he had an answer, whether it be changing your diet, food, giving supplements. Occasionally, it would be a prescription medication, but very rarely. But I do recommend parents go and seek a functional doctor or a naturopathic doctor with experience in autism.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this, Elisa. This is incredible. Now, if anyone were looking to just connect with you further, what does that process look like?
They can email me at info@speechworksbyelissa.com. It's hard to spell. You're going to put it in the links, right? Okay, great. I'm also on all social media platforms if you want to check out some of the progressive tools and progress from some of my families. And it's at Speechworks by Elissa. I'm also, in addition to being a speech therapist, I'm an adult autism influencer, so I help other adults. And you can check out things that I do at it's Elissa Renee. It's ELISSARENEE. And then if you're interested in coaching, we have the website www.speechworksbyelissa.com. I believe we're about to change that to yourchildwilltalk.com, so it's much easier to spell. But we'll see. It may be out when your episode comes out.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much again for your time. Until next time.
Thank you.